session 1E. Whoops. And we'll have our presenters introduce themselves, but we also want to encourage those who are in attendance to introduce themselves in the chat if they feel so inclined. It's always good to know kind of who's in the room and how we'll be interacting today. So in addition to maybe putting your name in the chat, and maybe where you're from, or even, you know, what your role is in this work or what you're hoping to get out of this session, feel free to participate is what I'm trying to say. Participate in that chat. We're going to keep everybody muted until it's time the presenters are ready to kind of turn that and open that up, the conversation. But for right now, we'll keep mics muted. A few guidelines. Note that we are recording. Chat at us if you can't see our interpreter. Keep your audio off until Q&A, or if you're in a place that really has a lot of maybe distracting noise. But know that you can post comments and questions in the chat at any time. And if you aren't familiar with Zoom and how this is set up, this is kind of a screenshot where you can access this comment bubble, which will then pull up your chat screen. And we will turn the time over to our presenters.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the welcome and for covering those logistics. I'm just going to bring up our PowerPoint. So just want to verify everyone can now see our slide deck. Great, thumbs up. Well, everyone, my name is Heidi Marshall, and welcome to our roundtable panel discussion, Leading Through Interconnectedness. With me today is my colleague, Janine Carlock, and the two of us are going to serve as moderators for today's session. To start off, we would like to recap our intended purpose and goals for this session. Co-curricular support services and those who lead them have traditionally operated at the periphery of higher education institutions, structured as separate from the education mainstream, i.e. academic departments, and siloed from one another, with their critical contributions to the institution often going unnoticed. The purpose of this session is to explore how work at the periphery has been drawn more center stage. We have asked a group of industry professionals who are currently leading toward interconnectedness through third space collaborations on their campuses. And we invite our panel members to describe these collaborations in terms of creating more effective services and building stronger relationships. Specifically, our session goals include exploring how, in reaction to COVID-19 global pandemic, work at the periphery has been drawn more center stage as institutions have grappled with transitioning to fully online teaching and learning environments, and what this might mean for those leaders at the periphery. In addition, we're going to explore Carlock's assertion that growing class sizes and the increase in teaching load taking place at many universities means that faculty, tenured or non-tenured, do not have the luxury of much one-on-one time with students, making this option less than ideal. Smith has called out that the idea of center has gotten in the way. We'll also explore Marshall's observations that higher education is in need of approaching leadership from a more inclusive, diverse, and critically multicultural perspective than its traditional bases have allowed. And finally, we'll explore how those leading at the periphery are more likely to embody a slow, open, and curious way of leading, moving their centers to more open and reflective spaces that can lead to interdepartmental as well as cross-department actions and interactions, creating a practice of care that is often in contrast to the practice of production or doing reflective work in the mainstream. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Janine Carlock, to introduce our panel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're excited to be with you today. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lisa Russell Pinson, who is an assistant teaching professor of writing in the graduate school at UNC Charlotte. In this role, she teaches writing classes to matriculated graduate students and develops and delivers programming for doctoral writers. Lisa's current research focuses on doctoral students' experiences in the dissertation process, especially factors that impede dissertation writing progress and interventions that help writers succeed. Her most recent work on this topic has been published in the Journal of Second Language Writing, 2019, and the edited volume, Learning from the Lived Experiences of Graduate Student Writers, 2020. Dr. Stephen Hansen is the director for the Center for Teaching Excellence at Duquesne University. You can see him as well. Among his responsibilities, he oversees instructional and professional development university-wide for faculty and graduate student instructors. Steve is an elected core committee member on the board of directors for the Professional and Organizational Development Network, or POD, in higher education. Dr. Jamie Patterson joined Walden University in 2007 as a writing instructor and form and style editor. For the past decade, Dr. Patterson has worked directly with Walden capstone students as staff and faculty at residencies. Before transitioning to contributing faculty and university research reviewer in the DBA program, Jamie also worked at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. There, she collaborated with faculty to build the National Center for Academic and Dissertation Excellence. In 2018, Jamie transitioned to faculty and dissertation chair in Walden's EDD Higher Education and Adult Leadership Program, where she now also serves as residency coordinator. And finally, Ruth Huang is the Learning Assistance Specialist for the CARE, or CARE Learning Center, at Pacific Oaks College. The CARE Learning Center provides both writing and academic skill support to all students, and Ruth oversees the operations of services provided, including tutoring, workshops, and writing support work groups. My co-moderator, Dr. Heidi Marshall, has served in multiple academic support positions at both online and on-ground universities, including as Associate Director for the Academic Skills Center at Walden University, the Learning Center Director at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and now the coordinator for the Online Writing Center at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. In addition to this role, Dr. Marshall is core faculty with Walden University's Office for Academic Support, teaching dissertation workshops, and adjunct faculty at the Chicago School. And for myself, I have also served in many positions teaching ESL and ESL programs at the University of Pittsburgh and Duquesne University for the past 28 years, working as a Writing Center consultant at the University of Pittsburgh Writing Center for 17 years, and teaching first-year writing to international and American students at Pitt and Carnegie Mellon University. Thank you and welcome.
Great, thank you, Janine. And before we launch into asking our panel some critical questions about the goals for our workshop, I do want to just sort of reiterate what we are meaning when we mean by leading on the periphery and through what we call these third spaces. So we have a few quotes here on the slide that I'll read. First, what it means to lead on the periphery. We see this as many ideas, influential contributions, decisions, growth, and more that are available on the outskirts or margins of many organizations. Offering a voice and empowering these margins can lead to far more sound, relevant decisions that are in the best interest of many more stakeholder groups. In addition, we see leading on the periphery as only once opportunities for and participation in such dialogue from all stakeholders at all levels takes place and is made visible, can we bring an awareness of the existence of these services, the locations of these services, and most importantly, the concrete value these services have for stakeholders, thereby encouraging the breakdown of silos. And by third spaces, oops, I apologize, I have to move my Zoom images. By third spaces, we really are referring to what Whitchurch describes as environments which do not sit easily in formal organizational structures and can be both ambiguous and uncertain. Those who work in them are likely to encounter a series of paradoxes and dilemmas described in this chapter and to develop their identities in relation to these. They are thereby extending ideas about what it might mean to be an academic or professional in contemporary higher education. So some context for you. And with that, we are now going to largely stop talking and turn it over to our panel of experts. So those who are leading on the periphery and in these third spaces. So we're going to ask you to, our panelists, to one by one, tell us about you, briefly tell us about you, your position, and your current collaboration.
So why don't we start with Lisa, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just give us a little introduction.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here. My name is Lisa Russell Pinson, and I'm at UNC Charlotte, where I am Assistant Teaching Professor of Writing in the Graduate School. In this capacity, I work with graduate level writers, teaching them writing focused classes, and also leading the dissertation support at the university, among other things. One of the things that I've found very interesting about my position is I'm the only one who does this kind of work on campus. And so it's been important for me to find collaborators on campus in order to make some meaningful programmatic changes within the university. And one of the places where I found the most, I would say the most impactful support has been at the Counseling Center at UNC Charlotte. I worked with a colleague who has now unfortunately left the university to go to another university, but she and I worked together for a number of years in providing dissertation support so that she would provide psychological insights and support for dissertation writers, while at the same time I would provide the writing support. We ran some dissertation support groups for a number of years, as well as other dissertation focused initiatives on campus. And all of that culminated in developing a course for dissertation writers that we co-taught. So it had both a very strong psychological aspect to it, as well as a writing focused aspect to it. And I'm continuing to collaborate with the Counseling Center. I've been selected as a QPR instructor. QPR is question, persuade, and refer for suicide prevention. And I'm becoming a trainer in that so that I can start making some inroads in providing training to the graduate school and graduate students, and particularly international students, since I teach a number of international graduate students. So thank you again for the invitation to be here.
Thank you, Lisa. It sounds like a very valuable collaboration. And Steve, how about you?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Hansen. I'm with the Center for Teaching Excellence at Duquesne University. I work in a small shop where there are 3 of us here, and but we have about 60 events a year that we sponsor and co-sponsor with other points of interest in the university. My title is Director of Faculty Development and Teaching Excellence. And I don't pretend to be excellent or know everything about teaching. And that's why collaborations become so important. And for me, one of the most productive collaborations we've had on campus is with our writing center, because they can offer support for faculty in helping design courses or helping design assignments, writing assignments. And here, post-pandemic, one of the most recent workshops our writing center is going to co-sponsor with us is Returning to Your Writing Post-Pandemic, because a lot of faculty just got stuck. And so I guess if I were to describe my position beyond teaching excellence and faculty development, I would say it's matchmaking, finding people who can work with us together.
Thank you, Steve. And Jamie?
Thank you so much. I'm Jamie Patterson. I'm with Walden University, and I am now the residency coordinator for the School of Education. And we do about, now with COVID, only around 24 events in a year, collaborating with all kinds of student services. And typically these events are in person, but just like everyone else, we had to adjust to COVID. And have been producing these events online, which created this incredible opportunity to really rethink how we were asking students to engage culturally with the institution. And from that, some collaborations that I'm really excited about came about, and we're working closely with writing faculty, form and style editors, to create opportunities for students to reimagine themselves as researchers through residency events that would bring them in, and they would actually get to, aside from their own research, kind of practice research skills and looking ahead to what it would mean to be a published writer. So that's in the works, and it's something that's really exciting for me and probably wouldn't have happened without COVID kind of showing us that we needed to be much more purposeful in creating spaces for students to have these opportunities.
Thanks. Another great collaboration. And Ruth, how about you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruth Huang. I'm the Learning Assistance Specialist at Pacific Oaks College. Basically, I oversee the Care Learning Center. And it's interesting because I often say that, we're called a learning center, but we a lot of the work that we do is writing center focused. And so like in other institutions, you'll see like a learning center is content, and it's major specific, but here it's kind of all mashed into one. And more than content, we do writing and academic skills development. And it's just, and I think that in that way alone, I think it's like I occupy this kind of weird space, third space, I guess. I'm still like, the third space concept, I think I'm still like mulling over it. I think it's a fascinating thing. And so in terms of my collaboration, I mean, I think that so I'm an early career professional. So I'm still, I think, learning a lot of things, but one thing is I've been collaborating quite a bit with the library and faculty. And one thing that was identified with our students, because a lot of our student population is non-traditional. We have a lot of non-traditional students. At one point, our average our average age was, I think, at 37 or 39. It's gone down since, but and right now we're seeing this interesting trend where there's like a group of students who are like in their 20s, and then a group of students, I think, in their like 50s or 60s, something like that. And so like, it's interesting kind of how that has been changing with the student needs. And so I've been collaborating quite a bit with different faculty departments. So our thesis students, it's been identified that they need more academic support. And so, I've been working with the faculty who's in charge of all the thesis students to see like how we can support them, because we don't have a formal, like writing program, like in terms of classes or anything like that. And so how can we support them when that doesn't exist, right? And so we've been providing thesis support workshops throughout the semester, and that's with the library. And so I've been working very closely with the library so that it's like, here are all of your resources available to you. Now let's work together. So it's kind of also inviting the students in for that. And one of the other collaborations that I've had was with our general education department, where, again, we are seeing some students who have less preparation in terms of writing background. And so it's, again, not having like this first year writing program or whatever it may be. What can we do to insert ourselves so that they are given some foundational knowledge? And so I basically recorded like some videos that I think now I'm like thinking back, I'm like, they need to be better. But there's something there for them. So students are aware of the resources. And it's that constant, I think, kind of collaboration on what we can do to kind of help students, be aware of our services. And I think that faculty collaboration is kind of a good one for me.
Thank you, Ruth, and all of our panelists for sharing. So we are now going to ask the audience, now that you've had a chance to hear who our panel is, the collaborations that they're working on in these third spaces, we'd like you to read this list of questions that we've developed, but we do want this to be an audience-driven dialogue. And if you have a question that you don't see here, you could also enter that in the chat. But we are very curious, what of these questions are you most interested in hearing our panelists talk about? So if you would post in the chat, you can just put a number in there. Again, if you have a question and you don't see it listed here, feel free to add an additional question. If we don't see any chats come in, then we'll just start going through in numerical order here. So I will pause for just 30 seconds or so to give you a chance to read these questions and let us know what you're interested in hearing from our panelists. Oh, it looks like question 5 is going to be our winner here, which is cheating because it's really 3 questions all in one. But I'll keep these, I'm going to keep this out. So this is our final slide. I'll keep it up here so you can also, as the audience, feel free to continue to let us know what question you'd like us to move to. Or again, if you have a new question you'd like us to ask the panel, please feel free to do that. So we'll start off with question number 5. And that is, how did you identify the need? So how did the collaboration develop? What institutional support, if any, do you have for it? Also, is work in, and related to that, is work in the third spaces threatened by emerging organizational cultures or structures? And then added to that, how do we position ourselves in the minds of upper administration? So really what we're looking to get at in this question is, where does the institution or the organization itself come into play in your collaboration? And so maybe Lisa, we'll turn it to you. We'll just sort of stay with the order that we had.
Thanks so much, Heidi. Yes. I identified this need, first of all, through my own experience in the dissertation process and how arduous it was, not necessarily for the content or the research that I was conducting, but from my own personal shortcomings in the process. I was a procrastinator, and I procrastinated because of crazy perfectionism. And I was surprised to find out that, wow, others feel this way in the process too. So when I took this position in the graduate school and I started working with dissertation writers, I immediately recognized this need, but also knew that I did not have the skills. I did not have the background as a psychologist in order to help these students in a meaningful way. So I reached out to the Counseling Center and I met my former colleague, Lynn Harris, who is a clinical psychologist, and fortunately, at one of her previous institutions, had run dissertation support groups. And she and I instantly started our collaboration by just very short programming. And we did have the support of the graduate school through this. I have a very supportive dean in the graduate school who was my supervisor's supervisor, and she was very interested in this kind of support. She recognized the importance of it. I think it helped that she had been the ombudsperson in the graduate school, and she saw some of the needs that that students had that were beyond just the writing, and that so many other things take place within that process, such as effective communication with faculty members and committee members, dealing with other kinds of issues, whether they be financial, because so many students do face financial challenges in the process that can be very stressful. And other kinds of things that go on. So really felt encouraged to pursue this further with Lynn Harris, this collaboration. And so, as I mentioned before, a lot of different kinds of initiatives culminated in the dissertation support groups that we ran through the Counseling Center. So we also had that support built in from the center where Lynn was housed, and we ran those support groups from that. We got some financial support from the graduate school to do that as well, and we're grateful for that material support. But after that, the students were telling us we need more of this. And so that's when we developed the course that we've had running now for, I think, 4 years. And that was a course that we co-taught together. And I learned a tremendous amount from Lynn over the years. I certainly am not a clinical psychologist as she is, but working with her has really helped me be more effective within my own practice with writers, whether they're at the dissertation stage or not. And I always try to bring in psychological elements to writing when I'm working with students, regardless of dissertation status, because I think that overall that can really only help to benefit their process. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I do want to encourage our panelists to jump in, in really any order you want. But if you want, I'm also happy to pick that order. So it looks like Steve is ready to jump in here.
So I've been working in our teaching center since 2005, and institutions often will go through changes, whether it's your general education curriculum or the kinds of initiatives related to strategic plans, that sort of thing. And When early on in my career, and we just had hired a new writing center director at Duquesne, Jim Purdy. I was experiencing faculty who had inherited courses that have what we call a W, which stands for a writing intensive course. But a lot of faculty just didn't know what the W stood for. And so the collaborations that I formed with the Writing Center, I think were driven out of need because of lack of institutional memory or changes in staff. And so Jim Purdy was wonderful coming in and helping us think through how we can help faculty to think through what a writing intensive course is for various disciplines. He also collaborated with us on workshops around writing to learn and writing activities you can use in any class. And so these were things that were very easy for me to turn around and sell to faculty, because everybody wants a writing activity they can use tomorrow. And so I would say if it was out of need and it was out of good pedagogy that our collaborations formed.
Great, thank you.
If you don't mind jumping in. I'm
Sure.
also very talkative, so please feel free to interrupt and say I'm talking too much. I get really chatty if I get excited, so I'll try to reel it in. But I have to say that for me, in terms of the identifying the need, it was really interesting because my supervisor was like, before you jump in and try to do anything, sit back and listen. And so one thing that I did, and I don't know if you can kind of get this from my personality, but I just like talking to people and like just getting to know kind of what is going on. And so that's exactly what I did. I just started talking to people, started to get a history of kind of how things have happened. At one point, we had tried to run an academic writing.
Oh no, I wonder if we lost Ruth's audio.
It looks like Ruth might be frozen.
Yeah, Jamie, do you mind jumping in and I'll just connect with Ruth and see if she's able to reconnect?
Oh, there she is.
Okay.
It hiccuped. Am I back? I don't know where I got lost. Am I back? Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yep, you're
Thank
back.
you. Yeah, it's been doing that lately. I have no idea what it is. I just like the internet hiccups for some reason. But yeah, so I basically just talked to a bunch of people. We had an academic writing seminar that it turned into a bottleneck because we very quickly realized, because it was a class that students had to pass in order to move on in their program, but students weren't passing the class. And this was before me. And so there was this huge thing where they just like exited out, stopped the program altogether. And so, knowing that, and I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, that's perfect, because how awesome would it be to have like this introductory writing class that, you could build and then kind of get students more acclimated to academic writing. But, basically everyone was like, that's not going to work. And I was like, okay, so what can I do kind of outside of that? And so it was just really talking to a bunch of people, and I had read somewhere, it's like constantly upsell yourself and upsell what you're doing, So I was like, all right, so I'm going to try that. And so from that, I got to know the Janae Romero. She's Heidi, I think you work with her. She's in charge of the general ed department. And so, I was just like, oh yeah, aren't these great resources? Aren't these, and then she was like, yeah, let's put it in the course, because there's a different introductory course that kind of gets students acclimated to the resources and kind of being back in school. And so from that is how I came to create like these 4 videos, kind of broadly about like the writing process and about like thinking about how you learn. And then we introduced a book called, it's by Sandra McGuire. It's also called like Teach Yourself How to Learn. And so it gets students thinking about how they do things, not just in writing, but in like studying in general. And so it was really just talking to people and saying,
Yeah.
Let's talk and let's bring the
Ruth, and Jamie, I hope you don't mind. I want to jump in and probably put Jamie on the spot a little bit. But Ruth, I think you mentioned something really important in your overview there, and that often we're facing situations where faculty and the organization say no because we've tried that before and it didn't work. And even though we might have ideas about, yeah, but you just didn't do it maybe the way I'm envisioning we do it. And so, but you sort of hear that no, because we say, no, we had a course and it didn't work. Students didn't pass it, or it didn't do what we wanted it to do. And so therefore there's just no more courses happening. We're not going to do that. And Jamie, I know that you have faced that in some of the initiatives that you have done. So anyway, I just wanted to sort of preface you with calling that out, because I think that's a really important part of this question too, is that we are often in these third spaces just told no.
Well, that's okay. So Ruth, I'm the same. Cut me off if I go too long. And also Ruth, you were much smarter than I was, because we did not listen. We jumped right in. So how we identified the need was when we had a shift to online, we knew that part of what our events were, that we were socializing students to the institution. We knew that was part of it. And we needed to introduce them to the Writing Center, and we needed to introduce them to resources, and we needed to introduce them to each other. And we're like, oh, great, we'll just put them in breakout rooms and magic will happen. And we thought we were so smart. And then they came back to us. We were reading through, we do surveys and we collect all the information. And they're like, yeah, it was nice to like be in a room with each other, but what were we supposed to be doing? And we realized then that, okay, how much we, in the in-person environment, we just took for granted that these students were going to make these connections, that they were going to be over at the coffee bar and piecing things together. We, in the in-person world, took no responsibility for creating the environment for those connections to be happening. And so we came across the culturally engaging college environments framework. I'm never going to get this name right. It's from Mucius. I don't know if this is familiar, but the whole foundation of this theory of the framework is that with students like ours, who are adult students, they themselves are non-traditional, they need the institution to take the lead, so that the onus is not on the student to create these connections. The onus is on the institution. And so, so that's kind of how we came to, in a winding way, to these collaborations where, like Heidi mentioned, maybe they had been tried before. And we do have people saying, oh, well, we've tried creating a space where students could, think more about publishing. But we're trying to socialize the ideas, but we were focused only on publishing. We weren't focused on creating an environment where there's a sense of belonging and there's a sense of community. And we are purposefully creating space where students can re-envision themselves as this kind of a writer. So I hope that all made sense, but I started off by saying we learned it the hard way. We did learn everything the hard way, but it's just so exciting right now to see all the potential, looking at how we can formalize these spaces.
But I think that's what's cool, is we get to go through iterations of, like trial and error. Like I started with like writing support groups from Academic Writing Month, which is apparently a thing in November, if you all are interested, by the way. And so we did that. And then at first it started to turn into therapy because it was during the pandemic. And it's like, we are not trained psychologists, kind of to Lisa's point, right? But we were trying to create a space for students where they could just talk about where they were in school. But, sometimes school can't happen because life is happening, and, we're all in each other's homes at this point, right? And so it became, like, okay, how can we retool this in the next semester so that it's more focused on writing, And so that's totally, I think that's kind of the cool thing about these third spaces, is that, it has that magic of malleability in some ways.
Yeah. So maybe we'll use that sort of transition, and maybe we'll go backwards in our question asking, because I think this is leading very nicely into question 4, right? So how do we take the work that we're doing in these third spaces and begin to make them more central, right? Particularly in that context where maybe we're trying, failing. We don't want to highlight those failures, but that continued progress and development. So Lisa or Steve, anything to think about or add there with relation to how we make these third spaces more central?
I'll just say that I think one of the keys to this is making the work visible to the campus when you're in a third space. It's very difficult. Like, I'm not in an academic department, I'm an administrative unit in the graduate school. And so promoting the work is very difficult. I think that's one of the keys in making it more central. The more certainly that I've been doing this work, the more people know about it, but it's really hard to get traction. And I've been frustrated with the amount of visibility that this work has gotten, because with that increased visibility means that you've got potentially more advocates, more resources, more participants, so that you can continue to grow and develop and learn and refine and, have this process established. But it's really hard. And I just feel like now, after having been working in the graduate school for almost 9 years, that I am just now kind of at the point where people understand what I'm doing, because that's one of the hardest things, is if you're the only person on your campus doing some kind of work, and especially when it's not in an academic unit, it's very difficult to make that work visible and understood. So I don't have any solutions. I just have shared questions about how to do that more effectively. I'd love to learn from you.
I was going to say, I make friends with faculty. I've been trying to do that like crazy, just, and trying to figure out, because the third space article too, I thought from Whitchurch that was interesting was there's this talk about who has power and who has influence. And so, the people in power may not have influence. So it's like identifying the people in faculty who have influence and then trying to approach them somehow with it, especially if they're intimidating. You're like, oh, I don't know. But, at least at my institution, everyone's really friendly and really approachable. So it's just kind of like, let's make friends. And so I think the online environment made it more difficult, but I actually had some faculty reach out to me because, they wanted us to present in the classroom, right? And then it's like, oh, actually, before we go present, can we meet? And now I've established relationships. So I mean, that's my strategy. I wonder if anyone else has anything.
Well, Steve, I'm really interested to hear your input on this as someone who does work pretty extensively with faculty, because I think both Lisa and Ruth have touched on an important point, that it's about building relationships with faculty. And as we know, right, that, the more mainstream are our academic departments, and those, initiatives that's where things are recognized. So, what more can we do as far as building relationships with faculty and leveraging faculty to make this work more mainstream?
I think, I'll answer that directly, and then I want to go off a little bit on a tangent. But directly, I think whatever you do, make sure, I talk about the radio station that faculty listen to and students. It's what I call WIIFM, what's in it for me. And so, you want to think about, if you're asking faculty to help you with an initiative, think about how you can promote that faculty person's face, even on your own campus, because they're looking for street credit, just like the rest of us. And so I always think of, what's in it for them. How can I promote them? How can I make them, and so for workshops where we have multiple collaborators, we list them and we tell what department they're from. And, we have a year-end celebration where we list everybody who's helped us, and we end up with over 100 collaborators a year. Janine's thumb up because she's been one of our collaborators in the past. But I want to go off on a tangent and talk a little bit about third space. And for me, being in a third space is a liminal experience, because I'm not a faculty person. And even though I'm designated as an administrator, I'm not upper administration. I have no power. And the beauty of that kind of position is that it allows me to work. Faculty feel comfortable coming to me, they're not going to the administration. And so, you know, I try to stress that all the time, that I'm a resource for you. I'm not going to tell you how to teach. We're going to explore together what feels right for you. So I think recognizing that liminality, and then on the other side, though, the administration's like, what are the faculty telling you? What are you hearing? And you know, and it's a weird space to be in, but it actually does end up making us more central. One of our key goals for our center is that we want faculty to feel like they belong and contribute to a community that values teaching and evidence, teaching excellence, collaboration, and diversity. And I think that sense of social, somebody mentioned socializing students. Part of our work, in whether we're a writing center or part of our work, socializing faculty too, just giving them a space to feel like they belong. I hope that helps.
Steve, if I could just add something, you reminded me of one positive thing I've been able to achieve amongst all the other things, is that in terms of making it more central, I firmly believe that writing instruction can be really, really effective and can make a lot of inroads when it's housed within departments. And so I have worked very hard to make some strategic alliances on my campus, in the College of Education, for example, because they've been very open about wanting writing support for their doctoral writers. And so I've presented in classes before. And so that was kind of a, you know, I would do that every semester. But last academic year, we made it more intentional, where I would be presenting workshops for the entire College of Education. And it was a sponsored thing with faculty introducing me and that kind of thing. And that was a way to increase that kind of visibility. I would really like to see if we could replicate this model on my campus in other colleges, like the College of Engineering or, you know, other places. But I think it really takes that faculty buy-in to see what your offering is worthwhile of our time to do this. So usually our initiatives would be housed within the graduate school, but having them housed within the department makes so much more of a difference. So I just wanted to mention that as something that might be useful for others who are, you know, really third space professionals.
Lisa, I want to jump back in real quick and just mention about our writing center, because usually we talk about the writing center for students, but we've actually been stressing, and Jim Purdy, the director of the center, is that he's there for faculty too in their academic writing. And so sometimes it's a matter of hat switching. But when faculty start to trust you on that, then you're gaining street cred, and you're, you know, the collaborations become much more rich. And so I think that's a great approach, working. It's almost like a satellite writing center within the schools.
I think the faculty working together, I mean, is a great idea. The whole idea of the buy-in, because I've struggled as well, and because you're still not seen no matter what you do. So, and faculty also feel like they don't have power, right? So that idea of socialization again for the teachers and their faculty, and feeling like they have, because they have all kinds of knowledge as well, especially from the ground, you know, on the ground working with the students. So I think Lisa already mentioned about maybe having more of these kinds of events. Is there anything that the other panelists see as kind of for the future of, you know, future initiatives that they see spaces for right now, either because or not because of the pandemic?
The one that worked on our campus is everyone is obsessed with APA on our campus. And so that's how the partnership or my collaboration with the library came about, where, you know, it's like, we're going to do, you know, an APA workshop. And when we transitioned from APA 6 to 7, like this has only happened once. And I'm like, I want to replicate this. I have no idea how, but we had over 200 registrants, over 100 participants at our workshop. Like, because of the number, it's like both of us were like, oh my gosh, it's going to be recorded. We have to look nice. And so like it was to that extent, because everyone was like nervous about like, well, okay, APA 6, what's new with APA 7? But then, we've been holding like 2 APA workshops since, and it's like, we're lucky if we get like 10 people, but it's like, how do we get that buy-in? And we had faculty there too.
I love that. It's like finding the common enemy, right? What can bring us all together? I like that example, Ruth. We've had a very similar experience with our transition to APA 6 to 7 too.
Yeah, and faculty were like, oh, I want to share this with my students. And it's just like, how can we replicate that? I'm like, where can we get something else like that that has that same kind of like energy and interest?
Yeah.
We need a new APA requirement. One of the workshops our writing center hosted with us was teaching the new APA to your students. And we had a lot of faculty turn out for that because frankly, they're struggling with it as much as the students are.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
good.
was going to say, just related to that, one of the things that we've been working on my campus too is just to what Steve was saying, is making sure that we are acknowledging that faculty are not writing instructors, and that if we can, give them the support, right? Say, hey, let's bring you maybe more to the periphery rather than us more to the center, and say, come out and see what we do. And it's going to benefit you. Like, you will learn from this. You will become a better writer. Hey, why don't you send that article that you're about to submit for publication to the Writing Center? Because I think that is really one of the best ways to bring our work to the center, is to say, one, it's a critical component of professional development for faculty, because they are learning through that modeling and through that process, how to do it with their students as well.
I just want to mention quickly, because this leads to, at Duquesne, when I was at Duquesne, the near peer mentoring program that they run for new faculty. And I did that for a few years, where like 2 to 3 year faculty, you work with new faculty as a safe space. You meet once a month. And, I ended up doing a writing presentation with someone in the law school that I met through that. And everyone that I met with interacts with this CTE and knows about the Writing Center and the services. And, it's just that's a really nice space for faculty to feel comfortable and also be familiar with those and see the value in them. That kind of, getting it out there kind of idea.
Another way to try to attract a faculty audience to the Writing Center would be not just manuscripts they're sending off, but maybe if they're working on a writing assignment, why not consult with the Writing Center on your assignment?
Mm-hmm.
Because you guys understand the structure of writing assignments better than anybody. And so that's would be another offering you could do to position yourself with faculty.
I was going to say, to not just the assignment, but also the rubric and how that assignment is going to be assessed, because I think that's where true writing instruction happens, is not necessarily in the development of the assignment, but how you are providing feedback and engaging in dialogue, right? Is that feedback dialogic? Are you simply just, is your rubric just checking off like, yes, there's an introduction, yes, there's a body of the paper, yes, there's a conclusion, and yes, they used APA, right? And you just have a series of points for each of those things. That's not, allowing any room for you to have a conversation with the student about the sort of efficacy of their writing and their writing skills.
I would also add that a lot of faculty can be uncomfortable with writing themselves. And so that's sometimes a barrier with getting effective feedback for the students on their writing. I approach this a little bit differently. I'm going to be giving a workshop next month on responding to writing for faculty. And I start off the presentation with, you are writing instructors. Because I believe if they're teaching a writing intensive class, that is a part of their charge. And so, helping them understand how to approach writing within their own discipline, within their own practice, I think is really important, and can also help to facilitate that writing instruction is not just something on the periphery, although I certainly do not see writing centers and writing professionals as being peripheral in the true sense. Maybe they're located there in the university context, but certainly the work that they do is very central. And I think that thinking about disciplinary faculty, they could really benefit from understanding that they are writing instructors. That is something that they need to become more familiar with and more comfortable with. And the more that we can help them with that, I think the better off all of us are, especially the students.
I think at my institution, the struggle is that like we are student facing. And so like I have floated the idea by, like, oh, like how can I engage with faculty? And it's kind of like, well, no, you're student facing. I'm like, okay, and, like we have the capabilities to work with faculty. And so I guess in some ways I'd like to know, like how can we encourage faculty to work with us? Because I mean, I've had, like third space conversations where, there are faculty who are finishing up their dissertation or whatever, or they're working on writing. And we have these conversations where it's like, we can form a writing group if you want, like I can work with you. But I think there's this weird, definitely there's this tension, for kind of what like the work we do, and it's student facing. And then we have like a separate center for excellence for, like for instructors and professors and all that.
I would reach out to the Center for Excellence and just say, hey, how can we support your work? Because you're going to find the director at that center realizing they're not equipped to do writing instruction, pedagogy, but you are. And so you could collaborate with the center. I would really encourage that.
That's actually who I'm working with to present this workshop next month on responding to student writing, is through our Center for Teaching and Learning. So I would obviously recommend that you consider doing that at your own institution, because they have been very receptive to all kinds of ideas.
Right. I do want to call attention to the fact we have just a few minutes left, so invite our panelists. I have been keeping an eye on the chat. I don't see questions from the audience, but if anyone has a question, please feel free to ask it of us in the chat or to unmute. But if we don't have any, I do invite our panelists. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share on this topic of working in third spaces, bringing our work more central?
I would just like to say that it's been such a pleasure for me to work in the third space and to learn from these collaborations. I've received so much professional growth that I don't think I may have ever achieved otherwise, in different directions that I may have never anticipated either. So I really strongly encourage you to consider collaborations and the kinds of things that not only you can receive from it, but also that you can give, because I know that through my collaborations with others, they've gained other perspectives and thought about, going in different directions as well.
Thanks for the opportunity to be with you guys today. I know I'm not a writing center person, but I value our writing center so much. And, talking about third space, so we're talking about student facing or faculty facing, but there's a whole nother realm. What about community facing? How might a writing center have an impact on the local region it's in? If you're in a school that has an emphasis on kind of that social obligation that you have as a school, it might just be another way to reposition your center. So just an idea.
That is great. And I also want to bring attention to Maureen McBride in the chat, has also offered a really great example of a collaboration that she has. she says they're student facing too, but collaborate with their faculty facing groups all the time. They offer a faculty service where faculty can submit assignments, syllabi, rubrics, and so forth, and receive feedback from 2 of her consultants who give feedback to the faculty member from a student perspective, which I think is really valuable, right? It's and a slightly different take on what we were talking about. So yeah, I think that's really great, Maureen. Thank you for sharing that. Any final thoughts in our last couple of minutes? No, well, thank you so much. Thank you to my co-moderator, Janine, for being willing to collaborate on this, and to all of our panelists, Lisa, Jamie, Steve, Ruth, for coming and sharing your thoughts today. And if anyone in the audience wants to follow up, our contact information is on the conference website. So feel free to reach out if you want to talk to any of the, to myself or Janine or any of the panelists about the collaborations that we've been working on.
I'd like to echo that thank you as well. This session has reminded me that although many of us work in spaces where vertical expertise is kind of most prominently valued, that much of the value in the work we do is that we can move horizontally across borders and navigate and negotiate things that in ways that support learners in many different environments. So I do need to go over a couple little slides, and we might have a bit more of a break before our next session. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Great. So again, a big thank you to Janine and Heidi, as well as our roundtable panelists, Steve and Ruth, Lisa and Jamie. Also to our interpreters. They are working very hard during this conference, and we really appreciate them being here. So what's coming next? You've got, I was going to say 20 minutes, but you might have a few more than that to stand and stretch, or take a moment and jot down those notes of how you're going to move what you've just heard into practice in your own spaces, how you'll move into your own third space or make use of new possibilities. But we will reconvene for sessions F1 and F2 at 2:40. Another thing to keep in mind, you can always visit the OWCA website to learn more about the OWCA. Also consider serving either on a committee or even on the executive board. There are some deadlines coming up and a lot of great work to be done. So you're invited and encouraged to join in the learning and the growth and the support of learners and writers across Writing Center spaces. So with that, thanks again, and we will see you in the next session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.